Well, good afternoon. This is day 4 of OSHKOSH. You'll notice that there was no day 3 videos produced. It ended up being a very busy day of packed activities that we just didn't get around to making an update. But today's the end of day 4, at least of the regular OSHKOSH grounds and air show. But due to the weather we had yesterday evening, thunderstorms rolling through, they delayed the night air show to today. So we're going to go see that in a little bit. Should be a lot of fun. So we're just out here enjoying the weather, and Brian will tell you where we're sitting in this beautiful background we have here.
All right. Yeah, so right at the minute we are in the backyard of the house where we stay while in OSHKOSH. The house belongs to our friends who graciously rent it out to us every year, and we're sitting on their boat dock right at their backyard, and the canal that we're looking at just probably 100 yards around that turn right there is an opening from the canal to Lake Winnebago, and they have a boat here, and it's really a lovely place and nice place to stay.
You picked up a spider.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay.
So yeah, yesterday afternoon, well, it was a busy day, as Brian said. One of the things we did yesterday was we attended this was put on by the FAA, and it was a seminar on how to survive ditching in the water. And there was a lot of education there about equipment and techniques, especially dealing with cold water. Make sure you have a way to be found. Brian and I recently purchased a personal locator beacon, and they talked about the benefits of those, so we were kind of glad that we were ahead of that advice by already having one of those for ourselves. One of the interesting things that I learned, probably 2 points I'll make about that class aside from the personal locator beacon, was if you're doing a ditching in the water, he made the point to keep your thumbs outside of the yoke as you're approaching the water. Don't grip the yoke with your thumb around it, but keep your thumbs on the outside of it, because when the airplane hits the water, the elevator is going to catch the water, and that yoke is very likely to violently move towards you, and if you have your thumb wrapped around it, it could very likely break your thumbs. And he made the point that you will probably need your opposable thumbs during the subsequent events that you will have to deal with after landing in the water. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And the other thing about it was, he made the point about actors and athletes rehearse and practice all the time for what they are about to do. So why would you go into a water landing having not rehearsed and practiced it? It could save your life. So I think it's important. He made a good point about making sure that you go through it, at least in your head, and think about it. Think about the way to get out of the airplane if it's upside down and that type of stuff. So anyway, that was what I took away from that. What about you, Brian?
Well, I guess one other important thing about that, he was really saying that there's a whole bunch of activities that you're responsible to make your rescue a success, and that's really making sure people know where you're going, either through a flight plan or have flight following. If you are going over the water, you're really assuming a lot of risk, and that risk has to be mitigated with the proper flotation in the on yourself in the airplane, knowing how to get out of the airplane. Then once you're in the water, are there ways that you could stay afloat until you're found? So that all goes to being able to notify them. They talked about the older 121.5 megahertz ELTs, which they really said aren't very helpful, in that it takes them a long time to respond to them, and once they do, the accuracy is very, very poor. So I really recommend.
Oh gosh,
you might notice there's some wind out today.
It's a little breezy.
Camera flew off the shelf there, but yeah, they said you really need to get a 406 megahertz, and if you could do something that has a GPS attached as well, that narrows it down to searching for you, inside of a building, as opposed to on a football field or in a county. So that's what I took away from that.
Why don't you tell them what we did this morning?
Oh, we're not quite there yet. So the other thing, last night we had our friends from Mississippi fly in to join us.
That's a good point.
So we spent some good time with them yesterday. It was 4 of them that flew up in a Bonanza with a stop in Dexter, Missouri on the way up. So it's good to see Sonny, Bob, Jim, and Kelly. So this morning, we have been talking about taking a ride in a Ford Tri-Motor for probably 5 years now. And it's mostly because every time you're at OSHKOSH, you'll see them taking off and landing all throughout the day. So finally this morning we got up, we went down there, a little bit of a line to stand in, but we got our tickets for the Ford Tri-Motor. And it's a bit of history. The one that we were in was, 89 years old now?
It was built in 1929. Yep.
So it was neat to get to fly in something that at the time was the revolutionary new aircraft for airlines.
And we'll try to put something up later about maybe about that flight too, so you can see the airplane and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think was neat about that flight?
Just the history of the airplane and the technology that would have been available at that time. And it's called a tri-motor because it has 3 motors naturally, and those 3 motors are just open. They're not cowled at all. Just open radial engines. They're the Pratt & Whitney 985 radials, 3 of them, just like the same engine they have on the de Havilland Beavers, the original Beavers. So 450 horsepower each. And it was quite interesting. I mean, the airplane has very little soundproofing in it. So when they put the power to all those engines, it was rather impressive with the sound. Brian and I were in the front passenger seats right between the 2 wing-mounted engines, and they were quite noisy. But it's just a really awesome experience. The airplane just floated along so easily with the big fat wing that it has. But yeah, 89-year-old airplane, and it flies just fine. I guess that's it for that. Standing in line for that airplane this morning, right in front of us in line was Kevin Lacey. I don't know if you guys have watched Airplane Repo, but he's the airplane repo guy, so that was kind of neat to see him and that. And this afternoon, we actually ran into Tammy Jo Schultz, that you might remember from April this year, April 2018. She was the captain of Southwest Airlines, 1340? No, it was 1380, flight 1380 from LaGuardia down to Dallas, and it had the catastrophic engine failure, and a piece of that debris blew out one of the passenger windows and caused a sudden decompression of the cabin. So she did an expert job landing the airplane safely. Unfortunately, there was the one fatality there, but ran into her, and that was kind of a highlight of the day also. That's another neat thing about this event here in OSHKOSH. Walking around the grounds, you just kind of run into people that you've seen on the news or people with famous YouTube channels or whatever, and everybody's just here to have a good time and see all the sights to be seen. So I think after this we're going to grab some dinner and head back to the airport for the 8 p.m. night air show, which is quite a spectacular, I was going to say a spectacle. It is a spectacle. So that's it.
All right, sounds great. Well, we will talk to you hopefully tomorrow.